Owen is currently the Learning and Development Coordinator for Dublin GAA. He's worked with Ulster GAA, Rockland in New York, and the Special Olympics as well. He's a brilliant coach, educator, and he's a good friend of mine. So we're just we're gonna get going, okay? So Owen, one of the first questions is just what was your pathway to your current job?
Hello everybody. Thanks Mickey for inviting me on, and thanks again for everybody to come onto this conversation. If you don't know, obviously me and Mickey know each other very well. Mickey was one of my groomsmen at my wedding last August, so we're on our best behaviour for this conversation. So just to let you know that we're never this sensible. All right, Mickey? So
Absolutely.
My pathway for my current role here, been very fortunate with the organisations I've worked with. So started off, obviously done my degree, done a bit of teaching, but then I got a job with Ulster GAA as a Department of Education physical literacy coach and a development officer in clubs. Very fortunate to be based in Fermanagh. Was in my own primary school working with the teachers who taught me as part of the programme. So working with primary 1 to primary 4 children, so junior infants up to second class and kindergarten to fourth grade in the United States for all the Americans who are on. So what I've done a lot of work mainly in the schools, obviously in terms of that programme with Ulster GAA. And obviously we've done a lot of work with the clubs in terms of club development plans, games development plans, coach mentoring. But the colleagues that I had and the organisation that I was involved with there was phenomenal. Great time to be involved with Ulster GAA in a new programme. It was the second year of the programme that I was when I came onto it. We had great camaraderie with each other. Phenomenal in-service, so with Terence McWilliams and Eugene Young and Jimmy Dara, as well as our own coaches and guys who I'd worked with and who were working with us would, again, challenge each other and help each other. But we would be in service for 6 weeks, doing games, doing activities to try and help the children when we went into the schools, and then to help the clubs and the coaches who we worked with in the evenings and the weekends. It was in that role, and it was seconded to Ulster Ladies Gaelic for a year and a bit. So I was Provincial Development Officer. So again, more in terms of working with the clubs, coaches, putting programmes in place, helping counties in relation to their development plans, working with the academies, being involved with the interprovincials at under 18 level. Again, great organisation to be with. It was a great experience for myself, and it kind of showed me that, gave me a accentuated where I wanted to go, and then went back into my original role with Ulster, and then I got by pure accident, just things happen that are meant to be, and that's where Rockland GAA comes into the equation. I know there's a few people at Rockland GAA on the call, and I know Dennis Madigan is there. I live with Dennis, and Tina Murphy came to the wedding, very good friends. But that club, before I got there, was huge. They were in the middle of doing their pavilion, so they had numbers of children, they had the coaches, they had strong leadership in terms of the chairpersons and the executive committee, which made my role much easier because of where I was coming from, the training that I had with Ulster GAA and the experience that I had with them and Ulster Ladies. Anything that I wanted to do and anything that I tried to do, I was allowed to do it basically. So I had free rein in terms of coaching and games development. And again, that was from the executive committee to give me that support, but the leadership within the club was excellent. So, and especially like I was kind of double jobbing with Ulster GAA before I moved to New York, and Mickey will know this at this stage because Mickey's on New York time at the minute. So it's only 2:10 over there. So when I would come home from schools about 4, half 4, I'd get a bite to eat, and then I was doing Rockland stuff from 7 o'clock onwards, which is great because it meant that I got to know everybody. I got to know people before I went over there. I had interacted with them in terms of they knew where I was coming from, my background. So it was building relationships, which was very important. And with Rockland then, we spent about 2.5 years with them. It was phenomenal experience. And again, I'll go into more detail later on some of the questions coming up. My fiance at the time, now my wife, Ciara, got a job back home. She's a senior pediatric physio with the HSE, so she was always going to get a senior job. So her 4-year career break to be in New York lasted 7 months. So it was just a too good opportunity to turn down for her. So then I came home and was doing a bit of club development workshops for myself and doing a few kind of conferences and trying to see where I was going to go in terms of my own role and kind of getting settled. So, but then very fortunate again, got a role with Special Olympics Ireland and was a short stint with Special Olympics. I was there for 8 months and then I got the role with Dublin GAA. But all my roles with Special Olympics, with Ulster GAA, Rockland, Ulster Ladies, and now my new role with Dublin is helping me in terms of where I'm going now. So I've undertaken a PhD for my sins too, so I'm studying part-time along with 9 other people at Leeds Beckett University. So all my research and the research that I'm going to do is all my previous roles have impacted on that and continue to impact on my daily life, my interactions with everybody. Because I wouldn't be here, I wouldn't be talking to all of you, I wouldn't have had the career so far without the grounding that I had with Ulster GAA, Ulster Ladies, Rockland, and more recently Special Olympics and Dublin GAA now. So anybody that I have been in contact with have made a huge impression on me. And again, I'll go into more detail on some of those people later on. But a little bit of a whistle-stop tour. I'm a bit of a nomad at the minute, so I'm kind of hoping to stay with Dublin GAA for the long term now in the foreseeable future. But I take a lot from all the previous experience that I had, and it's made me the person that I am now, say, as well as obviously my family and friends. But career-wise, I've been very, very fortunate.
Brilliant one. So these are nice, easy questions to get you going. They're all a bit of a personal touch in them. Owen, what's the best thing from coaching you've taken into your life, away from sport?
Away from sport. So probably like we all know obviously our favorite teacher and our favorite coach. We always remember them. And again, same as all the people in this call, same as all the people that are coaches and are become a teacher or get involved in sport, there's always a catalyst for that. And it's normally a family member or a teacher or a coach, but I've had so many. So I love mentoring clubs and coaches, and I do a little bit of that myself, but I have about, I would say, 7 mentors myself that between the PhD and obviously coaching and my work. So Terence McWilliams will be one, Eugene Young. So those guys and the teachers that I had when I was in school and the coaches that I had just gave me the catalyst to have a go at things. So I enjoy having a go and I enjoy trying things out and making mistakes, and I make a lot of them obviously. But the best advice that regards coaching I got was just to want to improve and develop yourself. If you think you know something and you think you know it, you probably don't. So one of the things that I'm always conscious of is to think of things from a different angle. So whether I'm coaching as a coach developer or a player even, be critically analyze either your own coaching or your own practice, but reflect on it. So be honest with yourself and be honest with your players. But players want freedom. Players, no matter what age they are, whether they're 4 years of age or playing international or intercounty, they enjoy. They're playing the game because they enjoy it. So you as a coach, what you want to do or what you want to try and do is foster that enjoyment through your sessions, through how you interact with the players. So obviously there's the physical element of practice, which is the easiest one to do, because obviously they're going to be doing hand passing or kicking or attacking, defending. They're going to be moving, but there's a lot of it of building relationships and having that social and emotional connection with your players, as well as obviously your coaches and your coaching mentors and your club, whoever you're working with. But again, try and get out of your comfort zone. Make sure that you're making mistakes, you're learning from each other, trying something new. But the biggest one is have patience, and obviously being with Ulster GAA and the program that we're involved with, as well as with Rockland GAA, would have taken the under sixes. And if you ask me a question of who would you rather have, a group of under six children or an adult team, and in fairness, the under sixes would win 8 or 9 times out of 10, simply because of the freedom that you have with them and the interaction that you have and the relationships that you're building with them, but also with their parents, because they're going to be their first coaches probably. You're going to build obviously the coaching pathway for them from they're coaching their children at 5 and 6 years of age, hopefully then throughout the club. So teamwork, relationships, collaboration, and this kind of stuff. So these webinars, and especially the time we're in, building those relationships and talking to people and interacting with people, and just keep learning and developing. And the mistake element is always going to happen. And if you focus too much on the mistakes, then you're in a hiding to nothing. Be honest with yourself, and if you're making mistakes, is a good thing, because then you learn from them, and then obviously you make things better and you try something again. So I've got that from everybody, and that's a mix mash of everything from Terence and Eugene and Brian Armitage and people have been involved with in coaching and mentoring. So.
Sorry, folks. There seems to be. Oh, that's strange. I'll just the presentation is not clicking for me at the minute. We'll just go to we'll get into the nitty-gritty questions. In terms of dropout, so we got a few questions with this one. Any ideas how to stop dropout rate, especially amongst teenage boys and girls from sport?
This is great. So this is great. These are the kind of questions that you don't want usually when you're doing these kind of conversations. So whoever asked that question, number one, thank you very much. And number two, Mickey's laughing his head off at the minute, by the way, probably. In terms of dropout, obviously, it comes back to your own relation with the coach. So there's loads of, research now in terms of what dropout is and getting it right. So making sure that for girls and for boys, the dropout rate is mostly between the age of 12 and 14 or 15. But in terms of the girls, and I'm on a call on Wednesday with Dr. Orla Farmer, or not doctor yet, but she will be in the next couple of weeks, in relation and her research with the Gaelic for Girls program is in relation to this. So she'll be in a better position to talk to you about this if you're on that I Coach Kids webinar on Wednesday. But in terms of my own experience, and the kind of research that's coming out is obviously by the age of 14, girls are dropping out at probably double the rate of boys at that age. So, and then after that, the kind of rates equalize after that. So once you have an idea of those dropout rates, which we do have now, so Lidl have done some great partnership with obviously ladies Gaelic football in terms of dropout rates, and obviously the Talent Academy and player development review that the GAA has been involved with, and Eugene Young, Brian Cuthbert, etc. But you have to think about why they're dropping out, and in terms of girls and boys as well. Like, it was one of the reasons why I dropped out of Gaelic when I was younger and went to football was soccer, was because of it wasn't fun anymore. So as coaching the parents, you trying to obviously concentrate on the commitment and the cost of playing the sport, but you as a coach have huge responsibility for making sessions enjoyable, and then obviously there's what makes it fun. So the social element. So in terms of girls meeting their friends and being part of a team, same for boys as well. Being involved in the club, making sure that their social and emotional needs are met. So you're making a connection with the players, you're getting to know them, not just about the team, but what's happening at home, how's school going. And that's a massive influence, because you want to know your players as well, because if they do drop out, then you might be able to pinpoint when it happened, whether someone was not working in the background or something that's happening at home, etc. And again, positive coaching is huge, and as well as recognizing coaching that isn't positive. So going back to the positive coaching, in terms of your club development plan, your coach development plan, this is where the coaching and games plan comes in, because you can have strong leadership and really good people, but if they're kind of doing their own thing, that'll impact on when a player moves up through the age groups. So if you have really a positive coach at 11, 12, 13 years of age, and then they move up to under 14, under 15, under 16, etc., and that coach changes, and that those behaviours of that new coach are completely different from the interactions that they had before, and they aren't maybe struggling with different things, whether it's school or body image or their own identity, for example, especially at that age. It's about recognizing that, and making sure that you want kind of obviously girls and boys to be involved in sport for as long as they can, and in different sports as well. But making sure that you're a role model, you're their first role model after their parents. A lot of times it's the teachers and the coaches play a huge part in it. So strong role models, and not only as coaches, but also, female athletes and male athletes, and ones who carry themselves well. But it's so important to make sure that you are aware of what's happening in the background. You have a plan in place through the club, through the county, whatever it is, but that you get to know your players, and the 4 different elements for why players drop out in girls in terms of some of the research is commitment, number 1, cost, injuries, and obviously it's not having fun. So as a coach, the commitment, cost, and injuries, commitment or the injuries, you could have a little bit of a handle on, but definitely in terms of the fun you can, so giving them the time, because they're playing with their friends, they're coming because they enjoy it. They're coming, yes, obviously they want to win probably, but it's the player development, it's the person development that's more important. And a lot of the dropout is because of added pressures from clubs, from counties, from parents, from teammates even sometimes. But creating that element of enjoyment and being part of something, being involved in sport, and the positives that has not only in sport and life, but obviously in your career, friendships, relationships. And again, it's just in terms of my own experience with it, there is research, a lot of research out in terms of not only obviously in Ireland in terms of ladies football, but in other sports. And it's something that UEFA and a couple of other governing bodies are doing a lot on. So UEFA are using the Play Matters. So Playmakers, it's a new program that UEFA are running now for 5 to 8-year-old girls to engage them more in football, soccer. And they're doing it through imaginative play, so doing it through Disney. So again, you're creating that, fun element and imagination, and getting them enjoying coming to sessions and make their friends, and then they're going to learn their skills through that. So it's having that foundation of enjoyment, purpose, and not as much pressure as there should be, especially at 12 to 15 years of age. They should be still enjoying it as much as they can. And
in terms of recruitment, I know a lot of clubs would say get the players young. But we have a question about player recruitment, especially in regards to U14, U16. What would be your thoughts on that? Just U14, U16, or across the board? Across the board. But the question did ask about the U14, U16 level in terms of player recruitment. So in other sports. Yeah, that's a difficult one. It kind of comes back to a lot of the same stuff I was talking about. So your club philosophy, your structure, the pathway for players and coaches. Are you development focused, and player focused and person focused? Player centered rather than winning. You're obviously engaging them. You want to engage with the community then, and local businesses, and obviously local
sports, other sporting organisations, and I know we would have done quite a bit of that with Rockland, and because where Rockland G was set, we had there was OMM, what's the soccer facilities across the road. There was Pee Wee football. There was baseball. There was New York City FC trained down the road as well. So in terms of what we wanted to do, I want to obviously recruit players, but we were recruiting players because when we had the players, you then had the parents and you then had the family. So it's not just about player recruitment. I would see it as family recruitment and volunteer recruitment. It all interlinks with each other and it all kind of comes together because if people are coming to your club because of what you're doing, fantastic. And then it's a matter of keeping them there. So, having good people, developing your coaches, developing your volunteers. So there's a lot of volunteers in clubs who are not coaches and have any inkling of doing coaching, but they're the treasurer or they're the secretary and the one to help out with events and stuff. So those people are just as important as the coaches who are on the field and the players who are on the field, because they're the ones who run your club, for want of a better word. So it's important then that when you have that player focused and good people, you're doing it for the right reasons. You're creating a community, and that's what the G is all about, and that's what sport is all about. You're in a community, no matter how big it is. A community is more than one person, that I would see it as. So creating that community of practice and that teamwork with parents and families and teachers and schools and community groups and other sports and NGBs especially. And I know obviously in America that's a big thing because the number of sports and the number of sports that the players are doing and playing and being involved with, which is brilliant. But you want to keep them with your organisation, with your sport. But obviously you want to give them the tools then that, they're being seen in the community to be really well-rounded individuals, so that when they do leave Rockland or Liston's Game, it's my own club or, SWAT or Mickey's club, when they do go out into the community and they're wearing the gear, wearing the club gear, the people know, oh, that's a good club. They're good people there. They have a really good rationale. They have a really good concept of player recruitment or volunteer recruitment, but it's a community and you want to have everybody involved. So again, as I said, not so much about gaining players. If you're gaining the players, then you're doing a good thing. But it's about keeping them in, and you can't just recruit them because obviously now you might be recruiting them because their friends are playing, which is brilliant. But being smart about what you're doing, when I know with Rockland, if any players if we want them for Gaelic football and they were playing basketball and soccer, obviously they were because the parents would come, I've never played Gaelic football before, but they say, okay, what sport did they play? Basketball, right? Fine, they'll be grand. Same as the hurling, lacrosse, baseball, so that element there, when you're aware of that, and in terms of your recruitment, it's massive. But having all that in your head is probably a whirlwind of information, but families and community is the biggest one. If you are a player-centered, child-centered club, your development-centered club, it's all about coming through the pathway for your coaches, for your volunteers, their training, everybody's pulling together and everybody's working together, then you're flying, because you're going to gain players, you're going to gain people. And again, social media presence comes into that, PR marketing comes into that, but the crux of it is that teamwork between community, clubs, schools, families.
Perfect, Owen. Again, folks, if anybody any questions, just write them in the conversation tab to your right hand side. So this brings us next on to advice and coaching. So we get a lot of questions in. On the first one up is, what is your own coaching philosophy? So what do you hope to get out of every session you deliver, whether it's under 6s or under 18s?
So anybody, I know obviously the anybody who's been to any of my workshops before or have seen me doing anything about any workshop, I talk about my own coaching philosophy. Now my own coaching philosophy is personal to me, and it's not a philosophy that happened overnight, and your coaching philosophy shouldn't happen overnight. But it's the easiest one that I could put on paper, and as you said, Mickey, for under 6 up to adult level, no matter what age group it is, it covers everything. And I will do stuff with 3, 4, and 5-year-olds, and all the guys in this on this call who have seen me with Rockland GA will know that I'll do 3 and 4, 5-year-olds. I'll do activities for them, and I'll do the exact same thing with an adult team. Obviously, change it up and increase the space, etc. But my own coaching philosophy is learning, fun with a holistic approach. Child, player, person always comes first. Winning comes second. So the first 2 parts of that, so the learning, fun, holistic approach. The holistic approach is Gene Coate. Obviously, the call talks about the 5 C's. So competence, connection, creativity, character, caring. So all of that there comes into it, and that's what you do as a coach. So whenever I talk about coaches and what they're doing, like, you're creating a connection with the players, because you might even say hello to them. You'll ask them how they are. That's you creating a connection. So that holistic approach is very important, because it's about the person first. That it always happens. If you have that in your head, that they're always learning, but fun is learning. So learning is fun. Have that holistic approach of the person first, and you stick to that. And and that's one thing I try and do, and it's sometimes harder than other times. Then the winning will come at some stage, and I'm honestly, I couldn't care less if they win a under 10 or under 12 or under 14 or minor. It's adult, and it's beyond that, because I know obviously with Special Olympics, Special Olympics would have had and have athletes who are late 60s, 70s, and it's that pathway the whole way up, that they're still involved in physical activity the whole way up. So with obviously sport and mainstream sport, I hate that mainstream word as well, but in terms of mainstream sport, it is once you retire, that you go into coaching, which is great, or you go into work with a club, which is great. That cycle always should continue the whole way. So it's not just about playing. You stick with the club, you get involved in the club, you get involved in coaching, you help out at the club. So if you create that, and again talked about it with the dropout, if you create that identity and that sense of purpose with the club, for your players, for your coaches, for your volunteers, then you're going to win at some stage. But I would rather have players and people who are good people, and who wear the Rockland GA colours and the Liscambas colours and the Fermanagh colours and whatever club it is, with Westport Sedanta, New York Rangers, any club, that when people see them in their club gear, that they think, oh, we like that club, we know that club, that's a really good club, they must be really good people. And that's what you want as well, and that's my philosophy. So more a people philosophy rather than a coaching philosophy a little bit when I think about it and reflect on it a little bit more. But yeah.
Perfect, Owen. Owen, what is the best advice you've ever gotten in regards to coaching?
We not talked about that before?
No. No. What is it? Oh no, that's like regards to like taking a session and taking a team.
Oh, okay.
So not outside of life.
Well, like at the start, whenever I first started coaching, same as everybody else, you try and do 100 million things at once, and because the game is chaos, so any kind of team sport is complete and utter chaos, but it's organized chaos, and that's the kind of chaos I enjoy. However, quickly learned that the players, and I always say this, players are your guinea pigs when you're a coach, especially if you want to be a learning coach and improving yourself. So trying things out with your players, trying new activities, new games, new conditioning games, and then making your mistakes. But if you're trying to focus on too many things, then your session is Players are going to get confused. You're going to get confused. You're going to get annoyed. It's not going to work. But one thing at a time works so much easier. Whether you're working with 4-year-olds who are climbing all around you, don't want to do anything, want to have a balloon instead of a ball, and just want to mess about, then your session's out the window. There's no even point in doing your session. So you'll have to adapt and be flexible in your session. So, and that one thing at a time makes that a lot easier. So if you're focusing just the catch on that session, there's so many different ways you can do it. But if your catch is the only focus in the game, your focus as a coach in the game, that's great. But Mickey Craig down the road, Mickey watches the same game that I'm coaching, and my theme for the game is catching, but Mickey watches the exact same game. I don't tell him what my theme is. He might pick out something completely different as his theme if he was doing that game. That's what you want. And that's where one thing at a time kind of makes it much easier for yourself. Plus, in terms of the learning, all the learning objectives, you can get so much done with that one theme and one concept for your session. And no matter what ability level the players are, whether they're inter-county players or I use the same kind of tips and stuff and philosophy for every type of athlete and every type of player, whether it's Special Olympics or working with in schools, etc. So keep it short and simple, one thing at a time. Fun, enjoyment, creativity, that's a given. You have to enjoy it as well. So you want the players to enjoy it, but there's no point in them enjoying it and you not. Because you want you increase your motivation for coaching. Relating to the player, and again, I kind of touched on that earlier on in terms of the relationships that you're building. So relating to the child, relating to the player, making it interesting for them, getting them to have a bit of free play, getting them to show you what you're doing, and again having a go at it. But the last two, questioning everything. Question everything that they do, just on pure badness, just see what happens. Don't tell them anything, just ask them a question. And just their whole thinking, and it's being a disruptor then. So that as a coach, you kind of want to be a disruptor because you want to challenge the players, you want to challenge the players in your group. And you're not being a disruptor just to be annoying. And in terms, like obviously, Mickey would probably disagree with that in terms of me, because I kind of, with him and with a few other friends, I'd be a disruptor just for the sake of it. But in terms of your coaching, being a disruptor is asking a question that's going to make them think, make them increase their problem solving, think in a different way. And that's what you want. And that's you embracing the chaos of the game, but also the players embracing the chaos. But you're doing it to increase their learning. Like again, you want them to make decisions. Once they cross that wide line, like you can scream, shout, do whatever you want, but they're not listening to you. If they are listening to you, then you're confusing them straight away. So being positive, asking them questions, one thing at a time, and enjoying it. You know, trying things out, having fun with it, because you want to increase your motivation as a coach as well. And if you do that, then like you're going to learn from it, you're going to reflect on it, and you're going to enjoy the process and enjoy the journey, and that's what you want.
Lovely. Well, and this next one's a tough enough one to be honest. So, in regards to county development squads, what's your thoughts on talent identification over talent development? And just talk us through that.
See all these questions. Do you like have the names of the people that have sent these in?
I'm sure they're laughing at the other end of this call, to be honest.
I'm sure they are, right? Like obviously, I could spend an hour talking to you about the research for talent ID and talent development, completely two different complete entities, and they kind of marry in together a little bit. But like, whoever asked that question, I would throw back, what is talent? So like, it's a little bit of an abstract notion. So, and Richard Bailey, Dr. Richard Bailey does a lot of this in terms of talent development and pathways and the pathway for talent development. And obviously previously would have been a linear approach, but it's not linear. It's complete organised chaos, because you're going to have players who, you have the relative age effect, players who are 11 and 12 and have matured faster than others, and they're perceived to be the more talented players, but they're not. They've just been bigger earlier and they've been born at a different time. So talent is not linear, and it's again, as I said, it's organised chaos. But as I said, there's more kind of people who'd be able to answer this better than me. And obviously the Talent Academy and Player Development Review, Brian Cuthbert and Mick Dempsey and Eugene Young et al. And that committee that consultation was excellent. So in terms of the GAA context, it kind of comes back to some of the stuff we were talking about earlier on in terms of having a framework, having a plan that's, player-centered, and obviously in terms of the talent ID, it's club-centered. So putting policies and procedures in for kind of clubs to underpin that framework, and the framework that they've kind of come up with is an adaptive framework. So I would envisage that changing depending on the feedback that academy squads are given and given back to Eugene and Mick, etc., and Brian. Because when you do a framework, sorry, and that's one thing I'm doing at the minute for my research, is doing a theoretical framework. So it has to be constantly adaptable, depending on obviously the people that you have involved with it. The next one then is obviously education. So education of players, coaches, parents, families, and educating them on the pathway. So I was actually on a call yesterday with a fellow called Ger Barry. Ger's involved with the Limerick Hurling Academy squads. And he talked to me about what they're doing down there and how they're kind of bringing the player-centered and the player development academy together, that it's player-focused, and it's education-focused. You want to help them become good people and, give them an enjoyment of sport. But obviously as they go up through the age groups, they have to understand that it's going to be pressurized, and how are they going to deal with that, and how are they going to adapt to that. So a lot of it comes this, as I said, the education. So you can have the competence and the skills, but the psychological and the sociological, so the psychosocial element is very important. So you do that, but then you have the governance. So you have your own clubs, the clubs who are involved in the counties, and then obviously your province, and then the national as a whole. So what capacity do you have for that framework? So whatever framework you're putting in place, or whatever plan you're putting in place, do you have the capacity? Do you have the support? And is it going to add value? So whether it's funding, whether it's anything in terms of that, but the policies and procedures have to be agreed upon. So when you're having all of that together, then it's has to be coordinated then. So you have your player development pathway, which academy squads, that's kind of the nature of the beast a little bit. But the talent development, I like that analogy a little bit better than talent ID, because obviously there's Premiership clubs who are doing talent ID at 4 and 5 years of age, which it just beggars belief. Like you can have a player at 17, 18 years of age, never played minor and under 21, and we know so many players like that, and a few brilliant examples of that who've never played minor under 21 were considered not good enough, but obviously have went on to win multiple All-Irelands. So you want to make sure that you're not misusing your resources. So that comes down to your coaches and your players. So the dropping of players, I don't agree with it, from 12 to 17 in the academy squad. And again, it comes back to capacity. Can you support those players when they go back into their clubs? Are you still communicating with them? How are they getting on? Communicating with their coaches, so working together. It's a team thing. It shouldn't be club versus county. It should be club and county and schools. Everybody working together, because that player hopefully they're playing other sports, whether they're 14, 15 years of age. They're playing school sport, they're playing club, they're playing county. That's huge. So you have to manage the person, and you want to, again, it's long-term potential. It's not here and now. It's, you don't want to miss out on that. And you don't want the players to miss out on that as well. But a couple of the questions that I would say that, for people who are thinking about obviously dropping players and not bringing players along on the journey, don't even think about it. Like, if they're there, if they're coming to practice, if they are involved, keep them involved. Because they could be, whether they play under country or not, that doesn't matter. But they could be your future coach later on. They could be the parent of the player in 15 years' time, who will be the next Henry Shefflin or whatever it is. But keeping those relationships are huge. And it is a struggle, and it is very difficult, and there's no one size fits all in this. But again, as I said earlier on, it's not a linear approach. So it's not from A to B to C to D to E, even though a lot of the frameworks are like that. It's constant organized chaos. You'll improve, you'll come back, you'll go across, you'll plateau, you'll get injured, you'll have to move back down again, whatever it is. And, you don't want to disqualify anybody. But again, it comes back to capacity. So there's, like, for example, this year, like Microsoft Teams, I am hoping, and I was talking to Jer and I'm talking to a couple of people about this, whenever academy squads do go back, and I know that Sergio Larbercial at I Coach Kids, and he's a national winner in basketball, but he's my friend, but obviously my supervisor from a PhD as well. They do Zoom sessions, and they're doing games and activities with their team. So that's a way of interacting with everybody in the squad. So if you do have a group of 60 players, and there is players who just feel as if, they're not part of the group because of whatever reason, those kind of, using that kind of technology to make them part of the group, and, to make them feel useful and to make them enjoy the process. Because I know for a fact there's people on this who've been injured, and I'm one of them. It was my club won the All-Ireland Intermediate Les Gamettes in 2011, and I was the only one injured, but I was kept involved, and it was one of my first kind of adult coaching experiences, but I was still a player at the same time, and I thought myself as a player, but I was kept involved, and that was huge. And when you're making those type of relationships, and when you're collaborating with the players and the parents, and the governance is there, that you have the pathway and you engage with the parents. And we did that with Rockland with under sixes. We engaged with the parents to show them, listen, here's what we're doing, here's why we're doing it. This is what's happening over the next couple of months, just making them aware of it. So, not putting a surprise on them. And I know a lot of counties and a lot of provinces are doing fantastic work, and that the Academy Review is a brilliant document, and the collaboration was huge, but now it's about trying to implement it now. So there's no right or wrong answer in that, but it's about, again, embracing the chaos. So knowing that the reality is that talent ID, talent development, it's very abstract. It depends on the eye of the beholder. What I'll see is different from what Mickey will see, or what anybody else will see. So you need to have a criteria, but making sure that you're not forgetting about anybody, so that the environment plays a huge role in that for the coaches and the players as well.
Well, just two things to try not to. One being you always seem to be injured, and two being at 27 years old, I'm still waiting for my county call up, but I'm sure people are laughing on this call. They're just muted. On just the last question in this section on coaching, and you sort of touched on it a bit too, but it's a bit broad. But when you're trying to implement, a consistent coaching standards and learning practices with a club, where do you start? So you did that were Rockland, how did you go about?
So again, everything that implemented in Rockland was a team effort, but it came from Ulster GA and the training and the support and the mentoring that we had through with each other, but also through Terence and Eugene and everybody else who came and done in-service, as well as the in-service that we kind of collaborated with each other. In terms of coaching standards, so, and again, I was in a WhatsApp group, player development coach with Philip Kerr, and like Philip talked about it a couple of times at the GA conference, and Kevin McKay was talking about kind of structures and strong leadership and chairperson leadership, etc. And that's massive, because if you have that and it's a little bit different. So player development is bottom up, but in terms of coaching standards and putting a plan in place in the club or the county, it's so important that there's strong leadership from the chairperson. And I was very fortunate, and again, as I said, with Ulster GA and with Rockland GA, to have that strong leadership and that training. So like the two chairmen that I had with Rockland was Marty McKenna and Joe McGurl. And Joe, while Marty was chairman, and the two of them would have collaborated with me, Joe more so because he was basically over me when I started the road. So that had a huge influence on me, but it was the way they communicated with me, the expertise they had, but they knew that I had expertise because of where I came from with Ulster GA. So they were good people, and again with Rockland, I can't overemphasize the coaches, the families, the players. Like they were my family when I was away, because I kind of had no family over there. I had made friends before I landed over there, thankfully through Facebook and Skype and everything else. But for 18 months, give or take, Ciara, my fiance at the time, was here. So that was tough, but Rockland were fully aware of all that before I even got the job, because it was mentioned in the interviews. I mentioned the interviews to make them aware of it. So that communication helped me in terms of that. So going back to then the actual putting a plan in place, it's, if the club is doing it themselves, then they're aware of what's happening, but you need somebody to kind of facilitate that. So we would have done that with our work with Ulster GA, and I would have done it with Rockland. Even though I was paid employee by the club, I didn't overburden everybody. So I was more of a facilitator. So I'd put on workshops for SWOT analysis, needs analysis, just a review of our coaching standards. But everybody was involved. Everybody was invited, parents, coaches, players, anybody who wanted to come and get involved. So you wanted to, who are we, where are we going? Your SWOT analysis, your strengths, weaknesses, opportunities that you see down the line, and threats. The threats element is it's not as dangerous as it sounds. But when you have that in your head, then the first workshop that we would have done and with Ulster would have been just, for want of a couple of better words, a vomit of information. So, and all I would be doing is collaborating that. So I'd be setting the tasks, and there would be tasks that I'm hoping to get certain information that I think the club needs, without telling them that this is what we need. So people are empowered, people have responsibility then when the document and whenever the governance is passed and whenever this is embedded in the club, because it's not me saying it, it's Mickey Quigg, it's Tina Murphy, it's Ray Lennon, it's Joe McGurl, it's Marty McKenna, it's Paul Rowley, it's all of those guys who were involved in it. And they're seeing this document, they're seeing it happening, and they go, I was involved in that, we were involved in that, we did that. It wasn't me. So that there is probably the biggest one. But then if you don't have that strong leadership and that vision and to have that blueprint or to put that in place, that can be difficult, because you're trying to then change behaviors and culture, and it's not perfect. Like even when you do get a plan together, and it's happened in loads of clubs down the country, you're always going to get people who are going to do their own thing that they think they know better. And again, that's going to happen, but it's how you deal with that. And it's having the governance in place to make people aware, listen, this is what we're doing, this is why we're doing it. So you need to come on board. If not, then things are going to change. And again, that's a kind of a shortened version of that. Normally, you'll have a few meetings, but again, it's building up those relationships. And it's so important. And again, through that plan, obviously it's club led, but you want the schools to be involved. You want the local schools to be involved because that's your your feeder schools. So having that school club link is important, but school club community link is massive. Because and again, so many clubs, and at this difficult time that everybody's trying to have a new norm for everybody, the community element of the GAA and the community element of our clubs is keeping people well and improving their well-being, because you have people who are supporting you. It's kind of like the cheers, cheer show. Everybody knows your name, so you want that community element in your club. But again, you have to bring people along the journey, and asking the tough questions is the hardest part of this, because some people just see what's happening on the weekend, and they don't see that the club is maybe hemorrhaging money, or the club doesn't have enough volunteers on the ground, or whatever. But that's your threat, or that's your opportunity, because you can bring people on board. And if you have 3 or 4 different themes for your plan, because in that first session, the vomit of information, you're probably going to have 10 or 12, and then putting them under different headings, and then putting into different concepts, and then bringing people back again, saying, here's what you give me, this is the information you give me. Is there anything you want to add in or take out? And again, if they're not doing that, then you can kind of think, okay, well, is there anything that we should prioritize? Because you don't want to make things too difficult. You still want to be enjoyable. And then it gives you a focus, that your focus then starts way out here and massive. And then you narrow your focus. So then it's more manageable. And the more people you have involved, the more people who come along on the journey and get involved, makes it so much easier. But the biggest one is the strong leadership and the vision. That's huge, because it stops with them. The buck stops with them. Usually if anything happens negatively in the club, it always comes back to the chairperson. And those plans are going to help with sustainability. They're going to help with, and that's one thing that obviously with Ulster GAA that we want to do in the Department of Education programme, was make things sustainable, so that teachers can take on coaching sessions in the school if we left, and clubs want to be sustainable, that if the GPO leaves, or if the GDO leaves, or when I left Rockland, my replacement, Tig Brannigan, Tig came out of finished college, but the support that the club had given me, I knew that it would support him. And what we had done in the club before he arrived, he'd already seen it. He'd been involved in it through the camps, or seen it at CYC, or had seen it in a coaching course. So he knew that he had support in that role, which is the biggest part of it, because ultimately him and the coach development committee and the games development committee run and oversee the games development plan and the coaching and everything else. So, there has to be governance, and there has to be responsibility taken. That's where Rockland were very good. If you have got a role, and if you've got a role in the club, then you do that role as best you can. If you're not doing as best you can, or if you're kind of slacking a little bit, then you'll not be long told about it. So in a way, the club has to be run like a business, having your plan, having your vision, knowing where you want to go, having your key themes, your blueprint for development, your blueprint for success, and then constantly reflecting on it, and constantly having 6 monthly meetings, yearly meetings about, okay, where are we now? What do we have to change? What do we have to adapt to change things to make things better and to keep improving?
Great job, Owen. And just something, Owen, that when the question popped up, that something you told me when I first started as a hurling officer, but to put things as a pilot often to the clubs or to the county board, because it can often be, it's a little bit easier taken if you use that particular word. So just as any GPOs or development officers on the call, just something to think about. So we're just on one of our second last slides here. Obviously, you get a lot of questions about the use of other sports in Gaelic games, and we've one here from Tag, as you mentioned, and he asks, do you take anything away from your work with Special Olympics that you've now brought into Dublin GAA?
Thanks, Steve. A lot. Even though I was National Coach and Sport Development Coordinator with Special Olympics for 8 months, and it was really only within the job 6 months before I actually got a proper handle on it, because of the nature of Special Olympics. Special Olympics have so many different sports, 13, 14 different sports. Then obviously you have the young athletes program and the motor activities, and so many coaches, so many clubs on the ground, and the capacity is difficult to assist coaches a little bit. So one of the things that we tried to do, and that we wanted to get coaches to be aware of with the coach developers, was the main one that we wanted to try and focus on, was for our coaches to be more inclusive, even though they are inclusive, if that makes sense. So making it that the players and everybody involved are included no matter what. And that kind of comes back to my coaching tips. So one thing at a time will make it easier then to have athletes of all abilities included. And athletes with an intellectual disability, and again, the word disability it's like nails down a chalkboard a little bit. So athletes with different abilities, athletes with additional needs, because I am a player and I am a coach, and I have additional needs sometimes. I mightn't understand something as well. My mentors will help me out, my coaches will help me out. I'll ask a question, so that the language as well is very important, and probably that would be the inclusion in the language part would be probably the biggest ones that I've learned in the job with Special Olympics, in terms of how the staff, how my fellow colleagues carried themselves, and how they deal with the athletes, and how they deal with the coaches. And it's not easy, and I'm not saying it is, but it's really, really enjoyable and hugely, hugely rewarding. And again, it's all the different sports. So I had to learn all the different sports and get to know the coaches, get to know the NGBs for those sports, which is brilliant, great challenge. But the respect, the inclusion, the communication with coaches, parents, families, having patience, but obviously your coaching tips. So one thing at a time. And I was involved in the link day. So it's basically a full staff training day. And one of the key things I was over with organising was getting athletes in to demonstrate. And we got 2 athletes, and they came in to demonstrate their gymnastics. And I would always kind of play giants, wizards and goblins, and I know Mickey and Tig knows about that, and a couple of other people who've been in my workshop. So I did giants, wizards and goblins with them before we started, just to relax them, and just to again build a relationship, because I was talking over the microphone. There was a lot of people in the room, just to show them that that I cared about them, and their parents were involved, the parents played. So that was massive. And that coaching tip of showing, letting them have a go, seeing what happens, having patience, was massive. And no matter what athlete that you're dealing with, whether they're 3 or 4 years of age, whether they're on the spectrum, whether they have an intellectual disability, physical disability, doesn't matter. Get them involved, make them part of the sessions, but don't pander to them, and if they have to be challenged, and they have to be kind of told about their behaviour, whatever, then you have to do that. They have to be treated like everybody else. But how you deal with them, having a little bit of a kind of perspective as well, what you want to get across. So the one thing at a time is huge. And that's probably the biggest one, in the language would be two of the biggest one. But it was a hugely enjoyable time, and very fortunate that I got that job. And it helped me, and obviously Kira and me settling back in home made it much more easier for me, because I had a purpose then. But it was a hugely enjoyable role and fantastic organisation, and they've just launched their Together at Home programme today for their athletes and their families. So if you haven't yet, go on the Special Olympics Ireland and Special Olympics International and see the activities and the plans that they have. It's pretty cool.
Owen, can you hear me? It's Tig now, because Mickey has just dropped off. He said he's trying to get back in.
No
Can you hear me yet?
Yeah, I can hear you.
So I have 6 questions here. So one of them was, what is a major difference you've seen between the development in the GAA here in Ireland and then outside of Ireland, in the USA or in England, wherever you've been to do your courses in it?
Well, probably the biggest major difference is the volume of sports in the United States, which is a blessing and which can be a challenge as well. So the opportunity to take part in sport and physical activities in obviously America, and obviously just the vastness of it, is one of the major differences. But having PE teachers in the elementary schools, when I was involved with obviously Lincoln Elementary, the Lincoln Lions, as obviously you know them very well, Tag, having been involved with them too. Brilliant school. Diana Galuli, the PE teacher, kindergarten and all the way up to 4th grade, just fantastic. The principal, the support that we got in there was brilliant. But the physical literacy skills and the fundamental skills of the children were way higher than what I was used to, having worked with Ulster GA in the physical literacy program, mainly because they're doing so many different sports and because they have a PE teacher in the school, in the elementary schools. So that was a huge challenge and a hugely enjoyable one then, because their locomotor skills, their object control, etc., were higher than some of the 7, 8, 9, 10-year-olds that I had previously. Another kind of difference is probably the culture and the culture in terms of how the games are ran compared to obviously Ireland. So, and I know obviously you're aware of this, and so is Mickey, and this is probably a challenge for New York GA and a challenge for the GA outside of Ireland in terms of the competitions and the appropriateness of the competitions. Are they child-based? So do they meet the needs of the children and their wants, which is part of my research for the voice of the child and children through play. Because that, anybody who's not aware, it's under 10 in New York it's 15-a-side under 10, and in fairness the games are class. So when Rockland GA play with Barnabas at under 10 or West Podstanta, the games are brilliant and the kids love them, but it's the vastness of that. However, then they have, even though that's, I would say it's adult led, because it's the adults who decide, the minor board, or and obviously who decide that we're going to go with 15-a-side under 10. But then you have the minor board and the clubs who are doing fantastic work in terms of all the blitzes that are done. So they do have small-sided games. So it's a little bit of a juggling act. And when you look back on it in terms of reflecting back on it, are the children getting more? Are they being allowed to experience more opportunities before children in Ireland? Yes, because they're playing so many blitzes. They're playing internal blitzes and internal games. And I know of Rockland, we put that in place and piloted it, etc. And I know a lot of other clubs do it, Shannon Gales, etc. Everybody else. But they still play 15-a-side, so they're getting small-sided games. They're getting then blitzes where it's a fun day. Then they're getting blitzes where it's a competition, and then they're getting games then at 15-a-side. So have that kind of, if you want, holistic approach a little bit. But which one do they enjoy more? And that would be probably something for Mickey and the New York Minor Board is to ask the children that, do a little bit of research, a little bit of field-based research with the children, 15-a-side or small-sided games. And again, obviously, in terms of the research and the number of touches that they get and how it looks, one ball for 30 players versus one ball for 10. So and again, that's a challenge, and that will always be a challenge until it's changed. However, how you work it and how you reflect on it and how you think about it, different people see it in a different way. And again, I'm being critically analysing it in terms of my research and looking at it from not my role with Rockland, but looking at it from somebody who has no experience of GAA, but understands children's sport, and coming in and seeing that what they would think, and how they would look at it and view it. So it's an interesting one, but again, the volume of sports is great. The opportunities they have, the PE teachers, and you want them to experience as many sports as they can. And it comes back to some of the questions that we answered earlier on. If you're player-centred, if you're coach-centred, if you have the structures in place, the community-based, you're going to get players. They're going to want to play, and a lot of the clubs in New York have students who are going on scholarships, but they still play GAA, still play Gaelic games. And that's a huge testament to all those clubs. And, I know a couple of clubs, but especially, obviously, I have more experience with Rockland. So, the likes of Kelly Brady and Kieran Dalton and Peg O'Riordan, who's on a scholarship, lacrosse scholarship. So, but those guys still played Gaelic games. But then it's a challenge then. You don't want them to get injured and lose your scholarship. So how do you balance that as well? And that's where you're thinking about the person first, not winning a game. So, it's building the relationships, and it's not easy, and there's a lot of major differences. But it's an experience that I am constantly reflecting on, and I miss obviously being over there and know the people over there, and I wouldn't be where I am now if it wasn't for everybody over there, especially, and they know who they are, and with us for G was the same. So it's a journey, and it's so important to have that link with everybody, your teachers, your schools, the other sports, the other governing bodies, the community, and that's a huge difference as well, because yourself, Tag, in terms of the town days and putting up a stall and getting the word out about the club. That doesn't really happen here in Ireland, and I loved all that. So I was getting to meet people, building relationships again, collaborating with people, and putting the word out about the club, and so that there kind of stuff is great in terms of the community element, and it's a little bit more of a community element than in even with Britain GA and USA GA, because there's so many people coming together from so many different clubs and counties. It's a more diverse community, rather than obviously when you're here, you're growing up with everybody and everybody inside out, and everybody's grew up with the club, and everybody's been involved in the club. So that can be a challenge, but it can be an opportunity as well. It just depends on how you look at it.
We're just through to our last section now, folks. Your favorite resources, Owen. So there is two questions. We'll just sort of we'll tie this into one. Like, what are your best books you've read that you have read at, or even any videos or websites as well, Owen?
So the resource, obviously, like at this stage, and again where everybody else is, the resources that are available through webinars, like Mickey's doing a brilliant job as well, and the people that he's got involved, aside from me, obviously he's had more high profile people than me, which is great, and a testament to what he's doing in New York as well, and Simon before him. The Learning GA webinars that I've been fortunate to be involved with, I coach kids, being involved with that, but also, our biggest resource is kind of each other, and I think people kind of forget about that. You do all these webinars and you're listening to all these coaches, but, ringing somebody up and asking them a question, and I have, again, I had it yesterday. I literally, and Ciara's in the living room now, so we were in Ciara's mum's yesterday in the conversation I talked about earlier with Ger Barry. with the Limerick Hurling Academy, went for an hour and 52 minutes. So very, very, very fortunate to have an understanding wife. But they're the kind of conversations that you want to have. They're the conversations that, you know, you're talking about your philosophy. And it was the first time I'd talked to him, and he was talking about, obviously he's thinking about doing the PhD as well. So our biggest resource is each other. The conferences, the GAA conference, but not only GAA, other sports, you know, basketball, American football, baseball, ice hockey, and I'm obviously a big ice hockey fan as well with the Rangers town. And using those transferable skills and from those different coaches, using Twitter as much as you can, putting in a hashtag coach development, learning, follow researchers. You'll get so much, like the likes of Colm Nally and obviously the GPOs in Dublin are doing fantastic work. If you do the WGA skills hashtag, you'll get a mountain of information, videos, which are fantastic. Your own research, whatever you want, but again, each other. In terms of books, I actually have 3 books kind of in front of me, but they're all research led because I'm kind of in the middle of my assessments for the PhD. So for myself, there's kind of 3 that I kind of chat about, and I talked about it at the Coaching Bubble podcast that I did with Dr. Stephen Behan and Niall Williams with the Camogie Association. So the first one is, some people know about it, is Coaching Better Every Season by Wade Gilbert. And obviously Wade is going to be on the GAA Learning webinars very soon. And he spoke at the GAA conference in 2017, if I'm right, I think I am. So basically in terms of athlete development and program, you know, it's a blueprint for coaches, and that's the best way I can do it. And, you know, I can always reflect on kind of all the books I read and everything that I look at, because that's one of the units for my PhD is sense making and making sense of everything. And sometimes I don't make sense myself, but I try and make sense about what I'm saying, what I'm doing, what the book means, etc. So in terms of the Coaching Better Every Season, you know, can't recommend it highly enough in terms of different sports, ages of players, relating it to different coaching situations, and it's a brilliant book. Second one then is kind of Conscious Coaching by Brett Bartholomew, and both Brett and Wade are heavily vocal and heavily involved in Twitter, so they're brilliant to follow as well. And the Conscious Coaching again is more about talking about improving relationships, stuff that I've talked about now. I've got a lot out of the book. Enhancing engagement, kind of trust of athletes, trust your coaches, targeting communication elements, different day-to-day situations, and you know, and how you would deal with them. And again, that's huge for me, because you want buy-in, so you want trust, you want to build relationships, and that's the biggest one, social intelligence and time, and that's huge, because you have a certain window, a small window of time for the players that you have at your practice. You want to build as much engagement as you can. You want to have a good session that they learn something, and you want to build trust. And then you have the chaos of the game, the chaos of the relationships of the players. They might fall out with each other, whatever it happens. But that consciousness and that reflection on what you're doing is huge. And I got a lot out of that in terms of reflecting on my own coaching, learning about my own coaching, learning about how I think and how I coach, and that was massive for me. And then the third one is kind of a little bit more on forward thinking and positive thinking, The Energy Bus by John Gordon, and basically talking about overcoming negativity and adversity and stuff, and you know, enjoying the journey, and you know, having a positive attitude. And I kind of I'm 90 miles an hour most of the time, except when I don't want to do anything, because I quite enjoy doing absolutely nothing sometimes, which is great for my social well-being and great for my own health and well-being. But you know, there's other people who are not like that, and they have to keep going, and you know, they can think about things too much and let things bother them too much, and you know, focus on the negative all the time. And you know, as a coach developer, the first question we ask when we bring the group in on a coach education courses, how did that go for you? And at least 5 or 6 times, sometimes 7, it's the coach focusing on the negative. Oh, I wasn't sure about that. No. Think about positive. Straight away to the negative again. And if you're coaching and your session doesn't work, you don't enjoy it, you think that the players didn't learn anything, all right, fair enough, reflect on it, why? But then when you come back to your next session, if the same players are coming back, then they couldn't like the session. Could have been because of the trust you've built up with them, the interactions you have, the relationships you have with them, how you engage with them, the connections, you care about them more than winning. You care about them as people. And the energy bus is more about, again, thinking for yourself in terms of being positive with yourself and your own mindset, and your own positive well-being. And we have our bad days and good days, but, reflecting on that as well, and, focusing on one thing at a time. KISS, keep it short and simple. And they're the 3 main books and kind of the Twitter, but there's so much. But again, all the different webinars, but each other, interact with each other, ring a coach, get a mentor, torture them. And again, the people on this call, people who know me, and Mickey and Tig, and especially Tina and Dennis, especially, and all the other people who know me, I am a torturer a little bit, but you don't ask, you don't get. The worst they can do is say no. So